I'm pleased to welcome you all to the Bombay Orthopedic Society Journal Club presentation. So I'll quickly share my screen with you all. Right. So I wish everyone a very happy New Year 2021. And today we are going to talk about this particular article, which enlightens us about the prevention and treatment of osteoporosis. Now, this particular article is practice changing for me. It is quite comprehensive. It is precise and concise to the extent that it will give you clear guidelines in terms of your clinical practice. Now, what is this about? So there were two essential groups which gave very good guidelines with regards to osteoporosis. One, which you all know, is the Royal College of Physicians, London, and the other is the National Osteoporosis Guideline Group, which is in United Kingdom. Now, both of them gave their guideline in 2008, which was further updated in 2013, and hence this article. This was further accredited by NICE and is widely practiced all over the world. All the review articles in this particular presentation is amalgamation of all systematic reviews and all meta-analysis done in this particular topic. And then the various authors came up with this particular guideline. Now let's talk a little about osteoporosis, what this article talks about. So it clearly states that up to 1/3 of women and at least 1/5 of men may have a fracture in their lifetime. In the Indian scenario, with increased life expectancy, we can expect more and more hip fractures happening. There is about twofold increase in the incidence of a fracture with just one standard deviation decreased in the bone mineral density. So as you can see in this pictorial representation, the predicted increase in the numbers from 1990 to 2050 is many fold, especially in the Asian subcontinent. Now, what are the symptoms for osteoporosis? Practically none, unless of course you've got a fracture. So what do we do about it? In our clinical practice, we all are very well versed with the BMD DEXA scan, and we can use various sites for the BMD DEXA, which includes hip, spine, forearm. Now, this particular article recommends the hip site over spine. Essentially, the reason being that the spine may have degenerative changes, sclerosis, and this may spuriously increase the BMD value because of the degeneration. Hence, the hip is preferred over the spine. Now, some authors have also recommended to use a combined method where either you can average out the hip and the spine measurement, or you can use the lowest of the measurement. Now, there's nothing wrong about it. Having said that, in terms of prediction of the fracture, the combined measurement tool has no superior benefits. Coming to fracture prediction, which we all talked about now, so only using the BMD to predict a fracture in the patient is very less sensitive. It is very specific. If you've got a low BMD, very high chance of fracture, there's got good specificity, but sensitivity is very poor, which means that there are many other factors other than BMD which can predict the fracture for us. Now, this includes the low BMI, previous history of any fracture, parental history of a hip fracture, smoking, steroids, more than 2 units of alcohol per day, rheumatoid arthritis, and just recently added diabetes mellitus. What is also important other than all these factors, which means other than all the fragility scores, is the propensity to fall. So if a person is more prone or vulnerable to fall, then he may be at a higher risk of a fracture. So this article recommends the use of FRAX tool as a very useful tool in the prediction of a fracture. Now, the FRAX tool, the advantage is that it has also got some dose response. What we mean by dose response is that suppose I had one fracture in the past, whereas my colleague had 2 fractures in the past, the person with 2 fractures is at increased risk of further fracture. So depending upon the dose of the steroid you take, depending upon the number of fractures you had in the past, the FRAX tool will give you a 10-year probability of having another fracture. typically used all over the world in women more than 65 years of age and in males more than 75 years of age. If you go to the Sheffield website, you will be very easily able to find this Frax tool. What are you going to advise your patient if you diagnose them with osteoporosis? Now, this article recommends, of course, our primary measurements, which is primary things, which is calcium and vitamin D. Now, calcium in the dose of 700 milligram to 1200 milligram daily has been recommended. Does it help improve BMD? Yes, it does. But does it really reduce the incidence of fracture? It has not been proven as yet. With regards to vitamin D, for low risk patients like men and not postmenopausal women and those who are not on steroids, you may go with 400 international units daily dose. Whereas in high risk women, age more than 75 or postmenopausal osteoporosis, patient with glucocorticoids, which are classified as high risk, you may use 800 international units. It has been shown to increase the BMD, to reduce the fracture risk, and to the extent there have been some studies which recommend that vitamin D can even reduce the incidence of falls. Now, let's not discount the lifestyle measures, which includes stopping smoking and limiting the alcohol intake in order to prevent osteoporosis. All the exercises that you recommend the patient to an often osteoporosis has to be weight bearing exercises. Remember, it is only the weight bearing exercise which can increase the BMD. Now, how do we deal with falls? So you will find a lot of literature online which talks about the falls prevention exercise program, and this is what this article recommends, that anyone who is more than age of 65, you may want to assess for the vulnerability to falls, and if found vulnerable, you can help them with falls prevention exercise program, which is freely available online. One such example used widely in China is Tai Chi, which is a measure to fall prevention. There are some articles which recommend hip protectors, and this review article talks about using a hip protector in an elderly, frail nursing home patient. However, it has been found that the compliance for a hip protector is very poor. Let's talk about why we all have gathered about is the pharmacology of osteoporosis. What are we going to do about it? So this is in a nutshell of all the medications available for osteoporosis and the anti-fracture efficiency of each medicine. So let's talk about alendronate. A stands for grade A recommendation, which means a very strong recommendation. An asterisk represents only a subset of the patients, whereas NAE represents not adequately evaluated, which means we still don't know whether it really works or not. So alendronate has been proven to show benefit in vertebral fracture, non-vertebral fracture, as well as hip fracture. Whereas ibindronate, which is a monthly dosing, has not been sufficiently evaluated for hip fracture, not proven. Zoledronate, again like alendronate, has been proven to benefit all three fractures. Denosumab, again, similar to zoledronate and alendronate, helps in all three fractures. Now, one of our favorite molecules, teriparatide, which we use very widely, it has been shown clinically with proven benefits with vertebral and non-vertebral fractures. But in particular to hip fracture, there is still no strong and sufficient literature to prove. Let's talk about the oral bisphosphonates. So alendronate, the article recommends use it 70 milligram weekly or 5 milligram daily doses for a maximum of 5 years. All precautions in place, which includes overnight fasting, 200 ml of water in the morning, no drinks or food for the next 30 minutes, and to remain upright. Ibindronate similarly is 150 milligram monthly dosing. Zoledronate is a 5 milligram dose. We use zoledronate as an IV infusion once in a year for a maximum of 3 years. Of course, we do calcium and creatinine levels before we post a patient for zoledronate infusion. It is advisable to preload the patient with calcium and vitamin D an hour before you give a zoledronate infusion. It has to be done in an hospital setting because of chances of an acute reaction, and it should be infused in any duration more than 15 minutes, where I typically use 40 minutes. Now, the best part about zoledronate has been that it has got the longest lasting after effect. So suppose you have given 3 years of zoledronate and you have stopped zoledronate now. Now zoledronate is the molecule which will have an effect even up to 3 years after stopping the injection. So that is the longest lasting bisphosphonate or any other osteoporosis management drug. Now, zoledronate has also been shown to reduce mortality when given after the first hip fracture treatment. Right? What are the precautions we are going to take with this infusion? Number one, the patient can go into sudden hypocalcemia. The patient may have hypersensitivity reaction, especially with the first dose. And it is not advisable to use it in patients with GFR less than 35 ml. We definitely want to ask our patients. So this is a checklist which has been recommended by the article and which I use in my clinic. Is we ask the patient if they have any dental disease or if they are any due for a major dental procedure. Now that needs to be sorted first. The second thing is chronic ear infection. You're all aware why we're talking about this is because zoledronate or any bisphosphonate may not just cause osteonecrosis of the jaw, but may also cause osteonecrosis of the ear canal. Now, it has to be used with caution in patients who use tobacco because, again, they may have a lot of dental problems. And of course, once you have given bisphosphonate, you want to be vigilant about thigh pain. So, talk to your patient and tell them that they need to report if they have any hip pain, groin pain, thigh pain associated with the further action. Now, talking about denosumab, very famous among our oncology colleagues, but more and more used in our clinical practice now. So we give a 60 milligram subcutaneous injection every 6 months. Now this is a very different to the dose which is used for giant cell tumor. So that essentially is 120 milligram. Here we are using 60 milligram subcutaneous dose. Now where we need to avoid this, again, in hypocalcemia, if the calcium levels are low, like bisphosphonate, it can also cause hypocalcemia. So it is advisable to do the levels before giving the denosumab injection and even 2 weeks after giving the denosumab injection. One peculiar side effect to denosumab injection is cellulitis. So yes, you can get a skin infection, and it is very much advisable to be observant of the skin condition after you've given the injection. Right? The good part about denosumab is that it can be given in renal impairment, but the disadvantage is until you're giving the injection, it will give very good response. The moment you stop the injection, it will have rapid bone loss once you stop the injection, and that rapid bone loss can be observed in a period of even 6 months time. Talking about teriparatide, which we use as 20 mcg daily dose, this can be given up to a maximum of 2 years. There is no present evidence of its utility in reduction of incidence of hip fracture. The contraindication is opposite, that is hypercalcemia. So if there is increased calcium levels, then this is contraindicated because this can cause further increase in the calcium levels. Any patient who has got a tumor or had a previous radiation, again, teriparatide may not be the best choice, and the article recommends to use denosumab in those patients. And renal impairment is again a contraindication. Can there be side effect with this? Yes, there can be, especially with initial therapy. The patient may suffer with dizziness and may also have postural hypotension. So how long typically we use these injections? We talked about teriparatide for a maximum of 2 years, zoledronate for a maximum of 3 years, and other oral bisphosphonate for a maximum of 5 years. Now, what are the indications beyond using this? So anyone who is aged more than 75 and who has got persistent low BMD, you may consider using it beyond this period. With a previous hip or vertebral fracture, with a fracture while the patient is on treatment. So suppose 80% of the treatment is already done and still the patient gets a new fracture. Again, you can think about extending the therapy. And any patient who uses steroid more than 7.5 milligram equivalent of prednisolone every day, you may consider extending the duration of treatment. So this is the algorithm for long-term treatment monitoring. So you will advise 3 years or 5 years of bisphosphonate, typically 5 years oral or 3 years IV. You will follow up with the patient in 3 months' time to discuss if there are any treatment-related issues. Now check if the patient has got a new fracture or no fracture. If the patient has got a new fracture after taking 80% of the treatment, then you may consider adherence that exclude any secondary causes, reevaluate treatment choice, and you may still want to continue the treatment. But suppose patient has got no fracture, you may use your tools of both FRAX and BMD after 3 to 5 years whenever you finish the treatment. Now, depending upon the BMD value and the FRAX score, you may consider either a drug holiday and then repeat BMD in 1.5 to 3 years time, or if it is bad, then you may consider continuing treatment. So this is in a nutshell by this article how you can do a long-term management of osteoporosis. Now, atypical femur fracture definitely needs mention because we may forget about it, and over years, patient may have taken 7 years of oral bisphosphonate and then come with a thigh pain. So duration is more important than the molecule itself, what you're using for the management. The incidence is 3.2 to 50 cases per 1 lakh person years. Now, this is fairly high, so that this is something which need to be vigilant about. So what are the shortcomings of this article? Of course, it gives us a guideline about how do we manage our clinical patients for osteoporosis, and it relies heavily on BMD DEXA score and FRAX tool. Now, we need to remember that fracture prediction is a very difficult thing, and not everything can be predicted by FRAX. So this particular table is the highlight of what is not covered in this tool, and definitely what is not then covered in this article. So if a patient has got any of these factors, you may notice that the FRAX tool itself may not be very useful, and the patient can still have a fracture despite you managing the osteoporosis very well. So this is something to keep in mind. Now, if the patient gives a positive history of any of these, you may modulate your treatment and individualize your treatment accordingly. In a nutshell, what do I concur from this article is to find out where my patient stands, whether my patient stands in the green zone or the yellow zone or the red zone. Now, this is not the BMD DEXA only. This is talking about the probability of the fracture based on BMD, based on the history, using the FRAX tool. So if the patient lies in the green zone, then you can advise them lifestyle advices like weight-bearing exercises, stopping smoking, not more than 2 units alcohol per day. If the patient lies in the yellow zone, these are the patients which I'll straight away send for BMD DEXA scan. And the patient lies in the red zone, you may even start the osteoporosis management without doing the BMD scoring. If you want to do the BMD, it is only for looking at the progress, but not for the indication of starting the osteoporosis management. So one thing to remember is that the 10-year probability, what the FRAX tool is giving it, is not the relative risk, but an absolute risk of having a fracture in the next 10 years. So I hope you all found this article useful. And if there are any questions, please feel free to email me or